Hey everybody, it's Jenna. Today I want to talk about something that has been bouncing around in my head for a while, the intersection between superhero comics and pop music. I'm not talking about the many comics, licensed or otherwise, that chronicle the lives of real-life musicians. I'm also not talking about the artists who turn or attempt to turn their personas into heightened fictional characters that can cross over with the comics world with ease. I'm talking about the ways that superheroes have been shaped by our cultural ideas and expectations and iconography around pop stars and vice versa. How did it happen, and why does it inspire such a visceral reaction? Granted, a version of the symbiotic bond has been around for basically as long as there has been pop music. In the 50s and 60s, Marvel and DC produced a number of vinyl records about their heroes and villains, with songs that ranged from ridiculous to way too catchy. Archie Comics' bubblegum pop group The Archies were a direct result of the success of the Monkees and the Beatles, with Josie and the Pussycats later being created to chase the girl group high, and both bands eventually getting Saturday morning cartoons and real-world avatars who could record and release records. Marvel's Rick Jones, sidekick to Marvel and the Hulk, spent much of the 70s as a Bob Dylan-esque folk musician, even getting to the point of being the musical guest on Saturday Night Live. And even in the real world, superheroes were having an impact on musicians. The Beatles were well-known comic book fans, with Paul McCartney even writing a song about Marvel's Magneto, Crimson Dynamo, and the Titanium Man in 1975. A song that is an absolute banger, by the way. Elvis Presley was also very open about his love for superhero comics, particularly the Fawcett-turned-DC sidekick Captain Marvel Jr., a connection that you cannot unsee once you look at his 70s jumpsuits. Still, something different bloomed in the 1980s, as both fields became more visually flamboyant, more character-driven, and more monocultural. Marvel had already found success with their officially licensed comics about Kiss in the late 1970s, with the first reportedly selling 500,000 copies. Part of this was probably due to the gimmick that the ink for each issue contained a drop of each band member's blood, but I digress. That success, as well as the success of the Archies and the hope that disco music wasn't going anywhere, led Marvel to embark on a joint venture with Universal Music Group's Casablanca Records. The goal was to form Marvel's own sort of cross-promotional pop star, who could not only headline a comic, but branch out into a television special and real-world music as well. Thanks to a long road of creative bureaucracy and bankruptcy, this character went through multiple creative iterations. Her character design went from being inspired by Grace Jones to Bo Derek, and her powers went from forcing people to tell the truth to manipulating light. Her name evolved too, from Disco Queen to Disco Dazzler to Dazzler. Formerly created by Tom DeFalco and John Romita Jr. and debuting in 1980's The Uncanny X-Men number 130, Dazzler eventually found a home in her own comic series, which was one of the first comics that Marvel sold through the direct market instead of newsstands. The issue introduced the world to Allison Blair, an aspiring disco singer who makes her way through the world with a pair of roller skates and an ability to turn sound waves into beautiful displays of light. After this issue breezed past Marvel's bestsellers with a whopping 400,000 copies sold, Dazzler gained her own ongoing series, which ran for 42 issues and multiple attempts at spin-offs. While her popularity ebbed and flowed from there, she joined the likes of the X-Men, Excalibur, S.H.I.E.L.D., and A-Force, and remained a fan favorite throughout. Her fandom also could be felt throughout the Marvel Universe itself, with other characters quoting her songs and sporting her merch. Dazzler may have never gotten the real-world discography or the adaptation that had been initially promised, but she was definitely the start of something. From there, the relationship between superhero and pop star had fundamentally changed. 1984's New Mutants Annual Number 1 introduced the world to Lila Cheney, a Joan Jett-esque frontwoman who spends her free time getting into hijinks across the cosmos. 1985 Squadron Supreme Limited Series recontextualized the life of Lady Lark, the team's lovelorn and fishnet-wearing analog to DC's Black Canary. After hardly having any lines of dialogue in previous issues, writer Mark Grunwald established that Lark's real name was Linda Lewis, a beloved pop star who had turned to an evil scientist to repair her broken vocal cords, only to be cursed with a supersonic scream. Even after giving up her music career to become a superhero, Linda hadn't quite become a has-been, as the series hints at her still being popular enough to sway the general public towards the Squadron's ideology, and she later performs one of her songs, a ballad called Dying for Your Love, when she attempts to sacrifice herself in deep space. Unfortunately, the pop star side of Linda's persona was never explored from that point onward, as a series of emotional traumas led her to adopt the hot girl-esque persona and gimmick of Skylark, and then basically become a background character in the Squadron's adventures. In 1991, even after the trials and tribulations and arguably mess of bringing Dazzler to life, Marvel once again tried their hand at a cross-promotional pop star, partnering with RCA Records LMR on a character called Nightcat. Technically created by Jim Salicrup, Barry Dutter, Stan Lee, Dennis Cowan, and Jimmy Palmiotti in her own self-titled one-shot, Nightcat was a fictionalized version of real-life woman Jackie Tavares, who was tasked with kayfabing as Nightcat on television appearances and on a 1991 album. The one-shot chronicled Jackie's fictionalized origin, which included crossing paths with Stan Lee, creating the Nightcat identity so she can secretly perform as a musician, okay Hannah Montana, and accidentally gaining cat powers from a pharmaceutical drug, okay 2004's Catwoman. Despite its best efforts, neither the Nightcat one-shot or the album resonated with audiences, and she faded into obscurity as quickly as she had debuted. I highly recommend Comic Tropes video about about Nightcat, which gets even more in-depth about it than I can here. It took a few more decades for the idea of a new superhero pop star to catch on again, by which time our pop culture had plenty more archetypes and aesthetics to draw from. Darla Deering, created by Matt Fraction and Mike Allred in 2012's Marvel Now .1 #1, was introduced as a pink-haired, Katy Perry-esque pop ingenue who, as a favor to her then-boyfriend Johnny Storm, agrees to join the reserve Fantastic Four while the original roster disappears through space and time. Armed with high-tech rings that give her a replica of the Thing's exoskeleton, she fights crime alongside She-Hulk, Scott Lang, and Medusa. A few years later, in 2015, Marvel's formal introduction of Spider-Gwen revealed that, on her universe, she, Mary Jane Watson, Glory Grant, and Betty Brant have a Paramore-like band together. That same year, DC finally properly entered the game with Brendan Fletcher and Annie Wu's quasi-reboot of Black Canary. Despite her name and her own sonic superpower, Black Canary had only been portrayed as a chanteuse in one-off alternate universes, instead moonlighting as some combination of a flower shop owner, a fashion designer, a martial arts instructor, or a secret agent. Fletcher and Wu's work changed that, making her the somewhat reluctant frontwoman of a punk rock band who fights supernatural threats and her own past in between gigs. From there, fans were treated to glorious outfit changes and plenty of drama, as well as 2 EPs of real music, which were performed by Michelle Ben-Simon of the band Cave Boy. And once the DCU rebooted again in its rebirth timeline, Canary's past and present as a rock star stuck around, even as the majority of the stories focused on her superheroics. This soon bled into other media through both Juliana Harkavy's portrayal of Dinah Drake on the Green Arrow and the Canary's backdoor pilot, and through Journey Smollett's portrayal of Dinah Lance in the Birds of Prey movie. Set photos from the since-cancelled Batgirl movie hinted at Smollett's Canary being an established musician performing gigs across Gotham, although we'll never know exactly what that would have entailed. And of course, Marvel Rivals has helped fans become abundantly aware of Luna Snow. Originally created for the video game Marvel Future Fight, Luna was introduced to the comics by Greg Pak and Gang Yuk Lim in 2019's War of the Realms New Agents of Atlas #1. A South Korean K-pop star who accidentally gets cryokinetic superpowers at one of her concerts, Luna has quickly become one of the definitive celebrity superheroes within the Marvel Universe, and Marvel has released 5 original songs of hers thus far. These are just the big two's biggest examples of superhero pop stars, as the concept has flourished elsewhere. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Images, the Wicked, and the Divine, a series from the Young Avengers team of Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey. Launching in 2014, the series follows members of the Pantheon, ordinary people who gain the powers and consciousnesses of mythological beings, as well as modern-day fame as pop icons, but with the caveat that they'll die within 2 years. The series was ambitious and emotional and a love letter to multiple generations of pop music, and I will forever mourn the fact that a film or TV adaptation has yet to get off the ground. Each of these examples of superhero pop stars, from the one-off failures to the longer-running characters, have been fascinating examples of meeting an audience where they're at. Even if they are a little behind the times, as was the case with Dazzler and Disco, they provided a snapshot of the trends and the styles and the overall vibe that people were expecting from their pop music at a particular point in time. In recent years, this has only exploded. Taylor Swift's Monumental Eras tour, which I was lucky enough to attend twice, has directly inspired elements of the most recent Dazzler miniseries, as well as a Black Canary concert set decades into the future in Wonder Woman #11. Even characters who have nothing to do with music have drawn clear visual inspiration from Beyoncé, Sabrina Carpenter, and more. At this point, I would be surprised if Chapel Roan doesn't become a clear reference point for something by the end of 2025. And just like the actual music industry, there's definitely still room for improvement in how these two fields relate to each other. Sometimes it's hard to define the in-universe lore of just how popular a certain pop star character is. Are they selling out arenas or stadiums, or are they in their own version of Lady Gaga's Joanne era? It's also fascinating and frustrating that the majority of these modern references still involve white pop stars and white characters, even as that landscape has started to get more diverse in our real world. And it's also fascinating that none of these references really have anything to do with male musicians, but that just might be a reflection of the state of pop music itself. That connection has also exploded as the world of superhero adaptations has grown. Beyond a gratuitous original song over the end credits, or a perfectly executed needle drop, or She-Hulk's woefully misunderstood Megan Thee Stallion cameo, there has been this anticipation for actual pop stars to make their way into that realm. We have had it happen a few times, with Hailee Steinfeld as Kate Bishop and Harry Styles as Eros, but those were after both had already established themselves as both musicians and actors. Lady Gaga has been asked about joining that world for years, telling Variety in 2021 that, quote, "I might, yeah, it's really hard for me to say that I wouldn't do something. I think mostly I'm not interested in doing things that don't ultimately have something meaningful to say." All of which makes me even more heartbroken that Joker 2 turned out the way that it did. Rumors of Dua Lipa playing a live-action Zatanna have outlived multiple DC cinematic universes at this point, with James Gunn most recently debunking it, for now, in late 2024. And, of course, there's Taylor Swift and Dazzler. The internet first linked Taylor to the role around the production of X-Men Apocalypse after the film's cast and crew were photographed with her during a stop on her 1989 world tour. This was debunked almost immediately, with Halston Sage very briefly playing the character in an underwhelming scene of Dark Phoenix. The speculation then started back up during the production of Deadpool and Wolverine, given Taylor's long-standing friendship with franchise star and producer Ryan Reynolds, and the movie's potential to be a cameo bonanza. Granted, there were plenty of clues to hint that it could have been happening. Friendship bracelets on posters, Taylor using the word dazzling in her 2024 song Clara Bow, and Ryan, Hugh Jackman, Jackman and director Sean Levy accompanying Taylor to a football game. But ultimately, Taylor was not in the movie as Dazzler or Lady Deadpool or a fictionalized version of herself, with Levy confirming to Entertainment Weekly that, quote, "It was never a conversation. It was never even a seed of a discussion. Obviously, Ryan and Blake, and myself to a far lesser extent, have our own relationships in real life with Taylor, but yeah, those rumors were loud and slightly baffling, but nothing I said or did was going to make them quiet down until this movie came out." As a Swiftie, this time was both a blessing and a curse. I would have loved to have finally seen the fan cast fulfilled, and to see Taylor add being in a billion-dollar Marvel movie to her list of accomplishments from the past couple of years. It also would have, in a perfect world, driven some Swifties to dive into the world of superheroes, and superhero fans to dive into Taylor's discography. Something that definitely did happen in the heyday of the rumor, but could have gone to a whole other level if she was actually in the movie. But at the same time, the mere rumor of Taylor being included in Deadpool and Wolverine was met with a fair helping of vitriol, mainly from men upset that a girly pop star would be infringing on their hyper-masculine club of violent superhero movies. Never mind the fact that the finished product of Deadpool and Wolverine helped bring NSYNC back into the cultural zeitgeist, but I digress. That reaction was both funny and frustrating to me because, as I've tried to lay out this entire video, there has always been some sort of connection between the power of music and the iconography of superheroes. To an extent, it goes far beyond the superheroes who are canonical pop stars and just into the way that a superhero operates. Both become iconic through their recognizable, often impractical, and groundbreaking costuming. Things that fans often wish they could wear in their everyday lives, but probably aren't able to. It doesn't feel like a coincidence that more and more people are dressing up for concerts, either in their favorite outfit of the artist or in a hyper-specific reference, just as cosplaying nerd culture has also become more mainstream. And just like superheroes, even the most candid of pop stars still has a sort of secret identity, shades of themselves that they separate from their public persona. That being said, more so than athletes or actors or other public figures, a musician's public work is intrinsically tied with their emotions, not unlike the stories of a superhero. Both wear versions of their loves, their losses, and everything in between on their sleeves for the audience to enjoy. Both also have public lives that can be divided into defining eras of events and aesthetics and moods, all of which subconsciously shape the way that they're characterized in the present day. These eras can become a badge of honor for longtime fans or a point of misinterpretation for newer ones, but they both uniquely mark how we talk about both pop stars and superheroes. Fans have the freedom to theorize and hope for a specific new era, or clamor for them to go back to a previous one, either creatively or literally. And at the end of the day, the actual fate is out of all of our hands. An editorial team can choose to regress or reboot a character, or change them in ways that no one ever expected. In the same way that Lady Gaga can choose to jump across genres, or Taylor can take her sweet time to release Reputation TV. Are pop stars the closest thing that we have to real-life superheroes? Maybe. And even if they're not, they've still fundamentally changed the way that we engage with celebrity and style within the world of superhero stories. Who's your favorite superhero pop star? Is there a real-life pop star you'd like to see fan cast in something? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends if you haven't already done so. Merch is available at the link in the description. As always, you can find me on social media at Hey It's Jenna Lynn. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, go read some comics and go listen to some pop music.